Good evening, I'm Jen Lask. On March 13th, coronavirus concerns led Governor J.B. Pritzker to shutter schools across the state of Illinois. Now, some students will be setting foot inside their schools for the first time in more than 5 months, while others will continue learning from home. Tonight, Classroom in Crisis will explore the guidelines set forth by the State Board of Education and the factors driving individual districts' decisions on how to safely educate their kids. This is 30 Minutes.
Following is a special presentation of WCIA 3 News.
Certainly never in my wildest dreams did I think being state superintendent I would be faced with the pandemic.
Instead of planning, I am currently working with a lawyer to update my will and make sure all my personal affairs are in order, since I am being forced to return to a building where germs and diseases thrive.
They need to be prepared for being online completely.
This is 30 Minutes Classroom in Crisis with Jen Lask.
It's been stop and go from the start, with school districts pivoting from one plan to another as the number of coronavirus cases climbs in Illinois. Schools are looking to the Illinois State Board of Education, ISB, for guidance, and I spoke with State Superintendent Carmen Ayala about the challenges we face.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think being state superintendent I would be faced with the pandemic.
Dr. Carmen Ayala spent the summer working with educators across the state to come up with a Plan A and a Plan B, and yes, a Plan C as well.
The virus is changing, on a daily, weekly basis. And I think that part of the decision making is waiting to see, where this virus leads us.
While the school closures across the state this spring were certainly unprecedented in many ways, Ayala and her team are looking at the lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina, as education was disrupted for months in the aftermath.
Almost an entire quarter of the school year went under emergency conditions and remote learning. And so a lot has been learned. I know that school districts have been preparing all summer as well, anticipating that there would be the possibility of needing to go remote learning.
For those that go remote, ISB is requiring 5 full hours a day of learning, with at least half of that time being synchronous. ISB is also mapping out priority standards to help teachers determine what they'll need to spend more time on.
I think that there is so much energy and passion and just love for our students and making sure that they're very taken care of as best as we can. I just want to make sure that they hear that that is noticed, it is appreciated, and that together we're going to get through this.
The State Board of Education and Illinois Emergency Management Association are giving out 2.5 million free masks to public schools across the state. So far, they've shipped 2.3 million and will also give out face shields to wear in addition to the cloth masks. According to ISB, roughly 24% of its 714 school districts chose remote learning, 46% chose blended learning, and nearly 30% chose in-person learning for this fall. Within the central Illinois region, the majority of the schools are offering either in-person or blended learning, although some of the largest districts such as Champaign, Urbana, Decatur, and Springfield have all opted for remote first quarters. And some districts have already begun the fall semester in central Illinois. St. Thomas More and Champaign is offering in-person and remote learning. 27 students chose remote there, leaving fewer than 200 students learning in person. Principal Sister Bridget Martin says the largest classes have 20 students and seats have been spread out at least 6 feet apart from one another. Those that aren't have dividers in between them.
We want our students to not be paralyzed by the fear of being sick. And so we're going to do everything we can to keep them as safe as we can. That's always, the safety of our students and staff is always our #1 priority. And it looks different this year, but it's not a different goal.
Everyone who comes inside has their temperature taken. Masks are also required unless you're eating, and there's a designated flight of stairs for going up and another for going down. Students are also encouraged to bring their own water bottles since they're not supposed to drink out of water fountains. Parents have had to scramble in some school districts to adjust to remote learning. While many districts are offering Chromebooks and iPads as well as wireless hotspots, that still doesn't account for childcare. Daycares and after-school programs have expanded in some districts, such as Decatur and Mahomet. In Champaign, La Petite Academy is working to make adjustments so it can help working parents.
We are not elementary school teachers. We are early childhood educators. We are here to facilitate the logins and the staying on task. And in the meantime, also filling their days with activities that they can do and get outdoor play.
Champaign's YMCA is also structuring its care around remote learning. Under ISB guidelines, buses will be able to hold up to 50 students at a time. Some buses are already running those routes in hybrid learning and in-person districts. But I spoke to one Champaign bus driver who's nervously awaiting the day he'll have to start driving kids to school when blending learning goes into effect. Benjamin Gulley has spoken up at multiple board meetings about what can happen in a long bus ride, especially if the windows have to be closed because of the weather.
Many of these kids have bus rides in excess of a half an hour, 45 minutes. Even if they aren't right on top of one another and they are doing everything that they should be doing, it's a vat. They say it's just a big tin can full of potentially infected air.
According to ISB, all students and drivers will be required to wear masks and do symptom and temperature checks before boarding. Districts are encouraged to offer visual guides for where students can sit and cannot sit to maintain distancing. ISB also recommends seating charts. Meanwhile, the USDA has extended its summer food service program through the end of August, although that does not include the National School Lunch Program, which will begin for certain districts at the start of the school year. The Illinois State Board of Education says it will ask for more flexibility from the USDA to help support school districts' meal plans this fall. Students at Decatur Public Schools started classes this week remotely. Now, parents with students with special needs are helping their kids get the help they need. WCIA 3's Jamie Mays shows us how.
For some families, virtual learning comes with challenges. Rachel Wilson has 8 kids. 6 of them attend Decatur Public Schools.
I have 5 with special needs, from mental health to ADHD to just being behind from being in hospitals, and then I also have a son with Down syndrome.
Their first day was a bit rough. Wilson says she was only able to get one iPad working, but she's doing her best to work through difficulties with the teachers.
So I'm taking at least 3 to 4 hours a day for each child just to get them through their work.
Superintendent Paul Frigo says parents are not alone.
They'll have the ability to email the teacher to get some advice or help, and the teachers will be in the buildings 3 times a week, so they could call the building and get help as well, or leave a voicemail that, hey, we're struggling, can we get some help?
The superintendent says they're working with families to make sure that students with individualized education plans get the help they need.
They will be having individual IEP meetings, individual education plan meetings, and looking how they can best meet that student's goals through the IEP, through a virtual learning environment. And they're also, depending on the student, making individual appointments to meet with the teachers.
Wilson says she's still adjusting and trying to get support. In Decatur, Jamie Mays, WCIA 3, your local news leader.
And as with many districts, the superintendent in Decatur says they're continuing to work with the health department to determine when it is safe for students to return to the classroom. School districts are also preparing to address the summer of reckoning for racial justice. Protesters, including kids and teens, have taken to the streets across the country, with thousands joining together in the streets of Urbana early in June. Protesters also made their voices heard in smaller towns like Tuscola and are continuing to push for change through anti-racism resolutions in their school districts.
You don't spray water in every house in the neighborhood if one's on fire, so I mean, I think this is something that people need to hear.
When you say Black Lives Matter, you're not saying that white lives don't matter, so it's really important to listen to and uplift Black voices, especially the Black voices in our own communities.
I think also we're just in a time where change is coming, and I think what's been really cool for me is seeing this happen in these really small towns. Usually you see it in the bigger cities, and I think the fact that it's happening in these small towns has encouraged other small towns to hop on that as well.
The State Board of Education is reviewing school districts' curricula when it comes to Black history. The board is working with a group of teachers to enhance its standards by the end of the year, not only for Black history, but also immigration and Holocaust education. Coming up.
Please do not ask me to choose between my life and my job.
That's the plea teachers across the country are making, the powerful letter from an Urbana teacher straight ahead. And before we go to break, officials say many parents have asked what happens if a student is sent home with suspected symptoms and has siblings in the district. Will they be sent home too? ISB says yes. If one student is being tested, the rest from that family will need to quarantine until they get the results back. If the results are positive, local health departments will put all of the people in their home into quarantine for 14 days.
30 Minutes Classroom in Crisis continues here on WCIA 3.
Many teachers have had to change their plans multiple times in August, and some who were initially planning to be in the classrooms are now adjusting to online learning with just days to go. WCIA 3's Cole Hankey spoke with Springfield teachers about their feelings on this new school year.
Before Springfield Public Schools voted to go fully remote to start the school year, Tina Nestler was ready to get back into the classroom.
But I would not be happy if I was not in the classroom, because I honestly feel this is what I was born to do, and these are my kiddos.
Nestler won't be teaching in her classroom for at least the first 2 months of the school year, and even when she does return, she's not sure what it will look like when she gets back.
And on a typical school year, you might come into my classroom and find me sitting on the floor with one child on my lap and one child on either side of me leaning into me, and I'm reading them a story.
Third grade teacher Aaliyah Wilburn wanted the district to give clear instructions on what to do and how to keep everyone safe moving forward. Before the district chose to go remote, she had to factor in not only her own health into her decision, but her family's as well.
How do I say, okay, I'm willing to risk my life, but then I'm putting my 1-year-old in danger?
Both teachers do not have much time to get everything together for the school year. Springfield schools start remotely on August 31st. Wilburn knows that remote learning isn't ideal, but she thinks in the end, everyone's health is more important.
It makes my job 10 times harder, trying to make sure that they're engaged, that they're loving learning, that they're finding that love for reading, that they're getting the help that they need by having to do it all online. Really, we do want them back in the classroom, but not at the risk of someone's life.
Reporting in Springfield, I'm Cole Hankey.
The earliest that Springfield can go back to a hybrid learning plan is at the end of the first quarter. Same goes for other schools, including Urbana, Champaign, and Decatur. Now, over the last several weeks, board members at districts across central Illinois have read countless letters from concerned parents and staff about fall plans. One teacher in Urbana wrote an emotional letter saying she's coming to terms with a frightening question: what happens if she dies?
Dear USD board members.
As a high school English teacher, Kim Summers knows the impact words can have. That's why Summers, who describes herself as an introvert, is writing and writing, hoping district leaders listen.
I mean, it was hard. It was difficult to write. Unfortunately, we're in the situation where we have to write it. Our administrative team is doing a really great job under the circumstances, trying to come up with a plan. That doesn't mean we have to accept it, though.
She's scared of what could happen if she's exposed to COVID-19 in the classroom.
My partner is also in education, and we have a 19-year-old son.
And she wants the district to know that while she would normally be updating curriculum and finalizing her lesson plans at this point in the summer, she's doing this.
I am currently working with a lawyer to update my will and make sure all my personal affairs are in order, since I am being forced to return to a building where germs and diseases thrive.
Summers says each year she tells her students about a question she faced when she was working toward her Master of Education 10 years ago. Was she willing to die for her students? It was in response to the rise in school shootings. Summers told the board she shares this story with her students every year.
I promise them that I will do everything I can to keep them safe, and this is not a promise I take lightly. However, I cannot make this promise to them this year because I know that I cannot protect them or myself from COVID-19.
And if every essay has a thesis, this one is hers.
Until the new number of COVID-19 cases is 0 for 14 consecutive days, in-person instruction puts our students and our teachers in danger. We all want what's best for our students, and in the current situation, remote learning is it.
We've shared her full letter on our website, WCIA.com. Summer says she knows other teachers who are updating their wills. The National Education Association says they're not alone. In Florida, where cases have been surging, a law firm in St. Petersburg is even offering teachers free living wills. Up next, the impact of this year on students' emotional and mental health and how counselors are preparing to help. And as we go to break, we're taking a look at this frequently asked question tonight. What happens if students with IEPs or 504 plans can't wear face coverings or shields? ISB says students cannot be denied the right to an in-person education if their school is offering that to other students. Staff working with them should wear PPE and maintain social distance as much as they're able to. And schools should work with their local public health departments to decide what the best kind of PPE will be for these situations.
30 Minutes Classroom in Crisis continues here on WCIA 3.
Welcome back. For those whose kids will be returning to their band or music classes in person, how can schools prevent COVID-19 from spreading there? Whenever possible, hold music classes outside. If they have to be indoors, use well-ventilated spaces and keep windows open if possible. Try to spread out students by more than 6 feet, and if they're playing wind instruments, students should be turned to avoid sending air toward each other, and instrument covers could help. Music reeds and mouthpieces should not be shared, and percussion instruments that are shared should be cleaned and disinfected between students. A big concern when schools pick up this fall isn't just physical health, but also emotional and social health. I spoke with the Champaign Middle School counselor, Sarah Lim, about some of the challenges students are facing heading into the school year.
A lot of the times their worlds are in their phone or in virtual, but even now as everything has become virtual, as much as we think like our students or our kids might love that screen time or love that time with their friends, I do think that, even as I had a few students reach out to me in email, whether past or present students, just saying like, I don't know how to navigate this, and even just sitting in front of a screen is really draining and really exhausting.
Lim says counselors are trying to stay engaged with students not only on virtual platforms, but also when they get opportunities like this Chromebook handout earlier in the week to see the students in person. Champaign added to its budget for the fall to include more counselors, anticipating a bigger need in the wake of the pandemic. And the CDC says the rate of coronavirus cases in children is increasing. It also says early data showing lower infection rates for kids was partly due to school closures. Many of those schools are now reopening. And in some COVID-19 hotspots, schools are already adjusting after trying to get kids back into the classrooms. Take Seawind Elementary in Florida. 14 students are in quarantine just 2 days after the school year started. At Woodstock High School in Georgia, nearly 300 students and teachers are in quarantine, forcing a county-wide stop to in-person learning. More than 2,000 students nationwide are now quarantined. And Governor J.B. Pritzker said the Metro East surpassed an 8% positivity rate for 3 days in a row, triggering new restrictions that went into effect Tuesday, impacting gatherings, bars, and restaurants. While they don't make any mention of schools, several Metro East schools returned this week and have already had positive cases pop up. At Collinsville School District, more than one employee has tested positive. The district says with 700 employees and 15 facilities, it's inevitable that people in our district will test positive based on the scope of the pandemic. That's why we have worked for months with public health officials to devise a response plan based on IDPH guidelines. And some local districts have also had to make some last-minute adjustments as well. A staff member at Arcola Junior-Senior High School tested positive for COVID-19 last week. Now, officials say they're pushing back the first day of school to Monday, August 24th, quote, due to a variety of reasons. The district is also working with the Douglas County Health Department to clean in rooms where that staff member worked. And this leads us to one of our final frequently asked questions as we head to break. What's ISB's definition of an outbreak in schools? Officials say 2 confirmed cases of COVID-19 infections within 14 days of each other and 2 people in the same classroom would count. Local health departments would then investigate and could recommend testing and quarantining all students and staff in that classroom.
30 Minutes Classroom in Crisis continues here on WCIA 3.
The Illinois Department of Public Health has officially approved the guidelines for high school sports. On July 29th, the IHSA Board of Directors announced their modified schedule and sent it to the IDPH for approval. Some school districts were waiting for that formal green light, but IHSA was still allowing teams to practice. The modified fall calendar allows cross-country, golf, tennis, and swimming to start on August 10th. And one of the districts that got back into the swing of things is St. Thomas More, which began school last week, as we mentioned. The girls' golf team held its first official practice of the season last week and first meet this Monday. The Sabres placed 5th at state last year, and while IHSA can't guarantee a state series this year, teammates say they're just grateful to be back on the green.
I'm just glad that we get to come out here every day. Even if I get to play one match, I'll be happy. Just for my senior year, I just want to do one. We have a good team, great coaches this year, so I'm just taking it day by day.
Especially not having a lot to do this summer, just with Corona. I definitely practice a lot more than I have in the past, just because you can still play golf, so that was one thing that I could do, and I kind of focused on this summer.
Multiple tournaments kicked off for boys and girls golf this week. And to see the rest of our coverage, go to WCIA.com and click on our Back to School tab. You'll find districts' frameworks for reopening, as well as resources for meal plans, remote learning, and more. We've also shared extended interviews with education leaders. And thank you for watching 30 Minutes Classroom in Crisis. Good night.